Guys, this is so crazy. A woman suddenly sprang up while yelling and cursing. She definitely woke the entire courtroom up and claimed that the entire room was mocking Sean Diddy Combs and ridiculing the legacy of a successful black entertainer. She even challenged officers to escalate the confrontation, daring anyone to act. Marshals moved in immediately, and the judge ordered her removal. Throughout the frenzy, Combs did not blink. He sat perfectly still, hands folded on the defense table, eyes trained on an invisible spot on the floor. The hush that followed was so thick, it felt like the oxygen had been vacuum sealed. Seasoned journalists later said the mogul's icily controlled demeanor was more unsettling than the woman's outburst. That isolated eruption crystallized the circus-like energy hovering over Combs' trial. Supporters see him as the target of ridicule and systemic bias, while critics view the proceeding as a long overdue reckoning. Either way, each day inside the Southern District of New York has delivered fresh drama. Now deep into its fourth week, the government's case alleges that Combs orchestrated a years-long scheme involving ST racketeering and the transportation of women for paid encounters. Combs has pleaded not guilty, insisting that all wild nights were between consenting adults. Prosecutors counter that those nights were built on coercion, violence, and fear. The most compelling testimony came from Cassandra Ventura, known worldwide as Cassie, who dated Combs for more than a decade. On the stand, she painted a portrait of a relationship that began as a fairy tale and devolved into a suffocating nightmare. She described moments on red carpets when she appeared radiant, and moments behind closed doors when she nursed bruises nobody saw. According to her account, one incident in 2016, captured on hotel security footage, was so incriminating that Combs allegedly paid 6 figures to keep it out of the public eye. Prosecutors say the recording shows him dragging and kicking Ventura in a hallway, underscoring their argument that extreme violence lurked behind the gloss. Ventura also introduced jurors to the concept of freak-offs, the internal term for drug-fueled marathon-esque sessions that dominated portions of her 20s. She testified that these events occurred hundreds of times, often running well past the 24-hour mark, with escorts hired specifically to participate. Combs, she said, positioned himself as both director and audience, orchestrating every detail, distributing pills to keep energy levels high, and replaying recordings later for his own gratification. Ventura explained that exhaustion was constant, but refusal felt impossible. Resistance meant violence, humiliation, or financial retaliation. Those allegations transformed the idea of a decadent party into something closer to involuntary performance. The next pivotal witness used the pseudonym Mia and described 8 years working as Combs' personal assistant. Her resume once sounded glamorous: private jets, A-list galas, global tours. But she said the reality was sleepless nights, panic attacks, and non-stop crisis management. She recounted unwanted sexual advances at work events, sudden punishments that included ice water dumps or being thrown into a swimming pool, and a door slammed on her arm during one of her employer's rages. Mia estimated that she once worked 72 hours straight, terrified of the consequences if she rested. Defense attorneys challenged her credibility, suggesting she was motivated by the potential for civil payouts, but she maintained that no settlement could compensate for the trauma. Singer Dawn Richard, who first gained fame through Danity Kane, added another chilling layer. She described a 2009 morning in Los Angeles when a routine disagreement between Combs and Ventura escalated in seconds. Richard testified that Combs grabbed a heavy skillet, struck Ventura on the head, and then dragged her up the stairs with one arm around her neck. Richard said she froze, convinced that any attempt to intervene might result in physical harm or worse. The next day, she recalled Combs issuing an unambiguous warning. Silence was the only acceptable response if one valued survival. Richard's testimony suggested a household governed by fear, where violence could erupt over minor provocations. Then came a twist, fit for a crime thriller. Rapper Kid Cudi, Scott Mescudi, told jurors that in 2012 his Porsche was reduced to a twisted metal shell after someone slashed the convertible roof, tossed in a Molotov cocktail, and set it ablaze. Earlier that year, Cudi had gone on a single date with Ventura during a break in her relationship with Combs. According to prosecutors, Combs saw the date as a betrayal. Cudi testified that prior to the arson, he confronted Combs by phone after learning Combs had been near his house. He said the fire convinced him the warning was real. Photographs of the melted interior interior, stunned jurors, and suggested Combs' anger could target not only partners or staff, but also perceived romantic rivals. Each testimony ricocheted through social media and pop culture outlets, spawning rumors and conspiracy theories. Online chatter speculated that Justin Bieber, who spent time around Combs as a teen, might have been groomed. Bieber's representatives issued a statement denying the speculation, while acknowledging that genuine victims exist. Former protégés, including singer Aubrey O'Day, said the trial vindicated years of hushed warnings. Commentary shows debated whether iconic status should insulate artists from scrutiny or make accountability more urgent. Even politics could not resist. A journalist asked former President Donald Trump if he might pardon Combs in a hypothetical second term. Trump sidestepped, saying only that he would review facts before deciding, but the very question illustrated how far the trial's influence had spread. Combs' attorneys argue that the prosecution stitched together sensational tales fueled by opportunism. They note that several witnesses have civil lawsuits pending, implying financial motive. They insist their client may have been volatile, but never a trafficker. To them, each lavish gift or payment demonstrates adult agency rather than coercion. They emphasize inconsistencies, such as witnesses who continued working for Combs long after alleged assaults, as evidence that events were exaggerated or consensual. Yet the cumulative weight of overlapping stories from different eras strains that narrative. For now, Combs wakes each morning inside Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, where the breakfast menu bears no resemblance to champagne brunches of the past. After months behind bars, he travels daily to court under armed escort, proof that money and influence dissolve at a locked gate. If convicted, he could face a sentence measured in decades, possibly the rest of his life. For a man once estimated to be worth nearly $1 billion, the contrast between yacht parties and federal prison could not be starker. Combs built bad boy records on charisma, relentless ambition, and an uncanny instinct for what an audience craves. He minted chart-topping acts, launched cultural touchstones, and cultivated the notion that anything he touched turned iconic. That mythology now wrestles with another story, the one told by former partners, assistants, and peers who describe a universe ruled by fear. The woman's profanity-laced defense of Combs underscored the polarized perception of his legacy. Supporters see a mogul torn down by jealousy and greed. Detractors see an abuser finally facing consequences. Somewhere between lies the decision a jury must reach. When the verdict arrives, the silence or uproar that follows will lock in the public memory of Sean Diddy Combs. Will he be enshrined as a visionary who shaped hip-hop, or condemned as a predator who exploited fame? The answer depends on whether jurors believe the parade of insiders who say the glamour was only a veneer. As proceedings inch toward closing arguments, one image lingers. Combs seated motionless while chaos swirls, no longer master of ceremonies, but a defendant awaiting judgment. The outcome will decide whether the empire he built stands as a triumph or a cautionary ruin, and whether that courtroom hush becomes the defining silence of his career. Don't forget to subscribe for more juicy videos related to Diddy's trial.